I was in my early 20s and I had a full-time job. So basically I was working 9 to 5 as a graphic designer, and then I was also going to school. And I just had a lot going on. I had a really, really busy schedule, and since I was actually really young, I've always been somebody that uses planners and relies on paper-based organization, not digital. Even though we obviously live in such a digital world, it's something that I've always felt has really helped organize my life. So I went to a bookstore, like most people do, and I bought a random planner, and it just had those kind of like the sections with the date, and that was pretty much it. And I was hoping it would actually organize my life, but I just felt like there wasn't enough structure. So I started looking into other planners that were out there that were a little bit more higher end and a little bit more higher tier. And what I ended up finding was a lot of planners that were targeted towards young moms that had, kids' schedules to organize, meal planning. And I was in my early 20s, so it wasn't something that I needed, but I understood the idea behind it. So I started looking into different types of apps and different ways that apps organize schedules, and then also started thinking about what is it that I need in the planner the most. In doing that, I figured out what that kind of important part of the planner was, and I decided to design it and create it. And what I ended up doing is showed it to a few of my friends, and they were like, oh, I would use one of these. So I made a bunch of them for a few friends. They started using it, and basically it ended up being this okay, well, now that I'm using it, I'm gonna need one next year. So can you make one for me next year? And so that's kind of how this whole thing started. I got my Shopify store. I quit my job on a whim and just decided to try this business. At first, I was out of my apartment. My mom and I were doing a lot of the kind of packing and order processing and all of that. I used to handwrite all of the shipping labels, all of the addresses onto the packages. At one point, there wasn't really a way for me to ship to the States in a very cheap way. So I would drive across to the American border. It was probably around a 2-hour drive total that I would make twice a week to ship out my American orders, and then I would wait in line for 3 hours to ship out all of my packages. And the ladies that worked there knew me by name. They saw me coming from a mile away and knew that they would they would have the next 3 hours of working, basically putting together these labels for me. It got to the point basically where we had so many orders that I was I shouldn't be handwriting these, I need to find another solution. And it's funny to think about the things that I used to do and where we are now, and how streamlined and how seamless everything is. And we still have a lot of personalization with the orders, but everything is just so much more organized. It's so much cleaner. It's a fully fleshed business, whereas before it was just a closet business. In 2017, I was very surprisingly diagnosed with a very serious autoimmune disease called multiple sclerosis. And basically the way that I figured out that something was really wrong was I lost feeling in the left side of my body completely. And that was obviously alarming, and I thought, I had pinched a nerve or something, but after an MRI, they discovered that I had had 3 attacks on my spinal cord in the last probably 6 to 8 years. And so basically I have these lesions in my neck and then all throughout my spine that cause numbing and tingling. And obviously having an autoimmune disease causes a lot of fatigue and can be really tough. And I didn't really know this at the beginning, and I'd never really understood what it was. I'd heard about it, but I wasn't, it was terrifying. And I, for a long time, thought that I wouldn't maybe be able to continue running my business the way that I had, because running a business is really stressful and takes a lot of time and takes a lot of energy as well to be present and to do all of these things. So, I think in having a conversation with my mom, she was, worried that it was going to make me worse or make me sicker. But basically what I ended up realizing was that my business made me really happy. And then I just was like, why would I stop doing something that makes me happy? I wake up every day and I'm excited about what I do. And just because I'm stressed, that doesn't necessarily mean that that's a negative thing. I think people often feel like when they're stressed that, it's a bad thing. But I think the only reason why you're feeling stressed is because something greater is at stake for you, something that you really care about. And so what I ended up realizing was that I needed to see my stress as a positive thing and an upside, and use it as my own kind of superpower and my own drug to kind of continue running my business. So I basically decided that I needed to be healthier, I needed to be better to my body, I needed to, get enough sleep, exercise every single day, take the right supplements. And so making all of these changes has really actually made me a better person, even though this really terrible thing happened. And so my business is kind of like my own secret drug. In January of 2020, I signed a 3-year lease on a store that opened on February 28th after renovations, design, painting, everything. We closed on March 16th and never reopened. So our store was literally open for 2 weeks, and it was obviously horrible. It was a very, very emotional time for me, and just really difficult as well, of just having this extra burden that I needed to take care of. But it ended up being a huge blessing that we got out of it, and that we really focused heavily on our e-com store and our Shopify store. And 2020 was to date the best year we've ever had. A lot of people were struggling with productivity and working from home, maybe surrounded by their children or their dog or whatever it might be. So a lot of people were looking for additional ways that they could kind of get help with their scheduling. So it was something that, we didn't really see coming, but was really, really beneficial for us in that time. And we were constantly just okay, what are we doing this week? What can we change? How can we continue to stay relevant? So I think it was a really positive change for us. I feel like after this whole kind of diagnosis and then all of these kind of ripple effects, I realized that it was finally time for me to practice what I was preaching, because, if you want to take care of yourself, you have to be organized. Being busy all the time is also very stressful. You need to be organized and have a schedule and have a ritual in order to find time for yourself, because oftentimes we use being busy as a crutch every day to basically come up with excuses for reasons why we can't do things. But a big part of being healthy is being organized. So basically the business that I had built kind of saved me.